In our last chronicle, we spoke about China's demographic challenge with policy analyst Ulrich Jochheim. Today, we'd like to elaborate further on China. What is this Hukou system? What is a migrant worker and who is considered to be a migrant worker?
Yeah, very good question, Chris. Thanks a lot. I think it's very important to underline that Hukou is a residence certificate, not a birth certificate. And the second less known thing in the West is that the Hukou entitles you to social services, but also to education. So the second issue is that you have many migrant workers in China who go to the big cities because they are looking for better paid jobs and they leave their families behind. But when they go, let's say, from Anhui province to a city like Guangzhou, they are not entitled to social benefits in Guangzhou, while the family back in poor Anhui province still are.
So why is this Hukou system so important?
It's extremely important, I feel, because it has huge social, economic and political effects. Also due to the fact that, according to the most recent statistic, like 292 million people actually are migrant workers. However, one has a little bit to differentiate because out of those 292 million, only 72 million move between provinces, knowing that the size of a province in China can at least be compared to the size of an EU member state, which means it's a little bit like if you move from one country inside the EU to another country inside the EU.
Okay, this is very interesting. But could you elaborate more on the economic, social and political implications of what is clearly the biggest migration in human history?
Yeah, actually, I mean, that was the point I forgot to mention, Chris. Thanks for making it. It's true, especially this inter-provincial, as I said, concerns 72 million people. So it's indeed much more important than any migration movement we have seen in the past. But if I may elaborate then on the effects. In social terms, I think the most important effect has been that China has avoided more or less the slums you see in other fast developing countries, at this margins of big cities. There is clearly poverty. I don't want to overemphasize that point either. There is clearly poverty also at the margins of big Chinese cities, but it's nothing compared to what I've seen in other developing countries.
Okay.
Then the second let's deal with the economic impact first. The economic impact has been that these migrant workers actually work like a kind of buffer for the economy. So in times of boom, they go to the big cities where there is demand for labor. They get their very relatively well-paid jobs, much better paid than in the countryside anyway. And during times of crisis, when the economy slows down, they can easily be sent home with the big advantage, as a little bit I mentioned before, that at least at home they're entitled to basic social services. The political aspect is clearly also very interesting because if we look at what happened in 1989 when there was the Tiananmen rebellion, first, it's not always well known in the West either that this was primarily an urban rebellion. It was kind of student movement, which was then also supported by urban workers. And that's why the party got so nervous. But what happened then is that the party asked battalions with urban recruits to intervene. And it seems, according to everything we read now in reliable sources, that those urban recruits refused to use force against the students and the workers. So the government really then called in troops from very backwards regions of China to quell the rebellion. And actually, some people say, and I think it's true, that ever since the leadership has given priority to the interests of the urban population, being afraid of another similar movement against the party in China.
Okay. Have there been any reforms over the years? Like any changes to make the life of migrant workers better or easier?
Yeah, actually they are trying also for reasons of infrastructure and to promote the construction sector now to have medium-sized cities, which can have already some million inhabitants, to be more generous in the delivery of Hukous to formerly rural residents. So they try to attract also the families, not only the migrant worker as in the past, but also their families, because there is now infrastructure available. They have all these empty housing, so there are strong incentives now to be more generous with the Hukous. However, in the big cities, as I said, Beijing, Shanghai, Chongqing, and Tianjin, the restrictions are still the old ones, so very rigid and not very generous to normal people of rural origin. The currently, I think, most interesting question is to see what has happened under Xi Jinping, and whether, he talks about more equality. So well, this has an impact then on this divide between the urban and the rural population. And there have been some rumors, which I cannot confirm at this stage, but the rumors are saying that one of the reasons why the recent lockdown in Shanghai was so rigid, was that Xi Jinping wanted to show to the rural population that they are not treated worse than the urban population.
Ulrich Jochheim, thank you very much, and thanks to you all for watching. Stay tuned for our next episode, in which we will discuss the interactions between Europe and East Asia.